3. Hello!
And welcome to another great episode of the Newark Debater. My name is Aziz Richardson, and we have an amazing show prepared for you today.
And my name is Thais, and I'll be your co-host for today. We here at the Newark Debater appreciate you for tuning into our episodes today.
Last episode was all about how you can become active in your community as a student volunteer. Not only do most school districts require you to have a set amount of community service hours, but community service is important for character development and growth. This discussion was led by Mrs. Karen Gaylord.
If you're interested in that episode or any other one, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel by typing in the Newark Debater. And remember to share our episodes if you think you know someone who would appreciate the knowledge. We appreciate all the support and feedback from our viewers.
We really do appreciate you all. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always email us at thenewarkdebater@gmail.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we can.
Today's episode is how to bring debate into the public. Often policy debate remains an insular activity that builds oratory skills but isn't represented in the mainstream academic culture the same way other activities are and sports. In the new digital era, most people have engaged in some type of online debate where it seemed you were just on two ships passing by in the night. Often these digital debates lack the research need for a full, robust debate and equal space with restrictions for people to condense their best arguments and the structure required to really hash out the indicts and critiques.
Welcome! Today we will have Brianna, who is also known as the #1 policy debater in the country for the year of 2018. So let's give her a warm welcome.
So we're going to start off with some questions for Brianna, and the first one's going to be, where are you originally from?
So I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I had moved around a lot. So even though I was born in Brooklyn, New York, I had only lived there for a couple of years, and I had moved to places like Newark, New Jersey, places like Pennsylvania, and like this small town that you probably won't know. And I just was raised in a variety of different places.
Next question. What got you into debate originally?
So my friend had actually told me about debate. I had learned about debate in the 6th grade, and my teacher, who was an English teacher, she was just like, "Oh, Brianna, you can speak well and you could write well. You should probably do something like academic." I didn't really know about the debate team at my school. My friend introduced it to me, and then when I went to my first middle school tournament, I kind of did bad, but when I transferred over to science in the 7th grade, I actually got more into it, and I started participating more, and I just went on from then.
How would you say debate has influenced your life at all?
I think debate has tremendously influenced my life. I've been debating for about 6 years, so it's like a massive part of my life. And I've learned a lot from debate. So I've learned my opinions on debate, and my view on life itself has expanded because of debate and my participation within it. For example, I've learned a lot of philosophies that I've made applicable to my life. I've learned the ways in which Black or brown people engage within various different communities, how that impacts me as a Black person, how that impacts my friends and the people I'm around. So I've learned a lot about the sociological factors that people have to face, and debate has taught me how to handle those things and become an advocate for those issues.
How's the transition for debating in front of 4 people to a crowd?
Yeah, so originally you would typically debate, when I was in middle school, I typically debated in front of a small group of people, just because not that many people went to middle school tournaments. You didn't have that many spectators. But when you get to the high school level, more and more people start to watch your rounds, especially as you become a more popular debater. People just want to spectate on you. So it's kind of nerve-wracking because originally when I was younger, I was really shy. I didn't like people watching me at all. So to have people actually sitting behind your round and judging you and saying that, oh, your speech was bad, or oh, your speech is really good, it's kind of nerve-wracking because you're like, oh gosh, I have to make a really good speech, otherwise I'm just gonna be a total flop. So I think that it's kind of nerve-wracking, but it's not as harsh, especially when you have experience and you continually do it.
What advice would you give to students who are trying to participate in public debates?
I think that, like me, if you were shy originally, it's okay to take a breather and be able to handle it, because sometimes I understand the pressure and the nervousness that people get. Originally I used to sometimes stutter when I was speaking, and it would be kind of awkward for me. But I think that when it comes to speaking in front of crowds, just know that it's natural, know that you can do it, and it's totally possible for you to do it. I also think that if people want to participate in public debate, you should just do your research, know what you're talking about, so you don't come up on stage like acting like a fool or seeming questionable with your arguments or what you're presenting, just because people like people who know things and who are knowledgeable.
Okay, so let's stray a little bit from yourself. Let's ask an opinion question. Do you believe that teachers should facilitate classroom discussions that turn into debates or use in a debate format?
Yeah, I definitely do think that people, or teachers specifically, should facilitate in-class debates. So I've had some teachers who do Socrates circles, and those Socrates circles are basically where you're sitting around a circle and you're talking about like a book or a quote or something that's in there, and you're basically having conversations on that. And I thought that was really helpful and engaging because you can see a variety of different perspectives. Also, I've realized that my classmates and I have like various different perspectives that conflict with one another. So it's nice to kind of engage within like a battle of sorts, trying to see whether or not your perspective is right, or actually hearing other people's perspectives and possibly changing your own mind.
So out of the 6 years that you've been debating, what's like the favorite argument that you run of like heard this far?
So I think that my favorite argument is actually, I think I have two. So the first argument would be like this reparations argument, just because reparations I think is a really strategic argument because it's so fluid. Like most people think that reparations for black people means like giving black people a bunch of money to compensate for slavery. Reparations could be things like acknowledgement, it could be things like mental health institutions, it could be so much more. And I think that that's a really fluid argument that you can engage in multiple and a variety of ways. My second favorite argument would probably be one on this year's topic. This year's topic is like plea bargaining ought to be abolished. And I like the topic because I found like this argument that was like plea bargaining ought to be abolished because people are getting sterilized through plea bargains. So you can get 50 or you can get like 60 days or 30 days off your sentence if you agree to being sterilized, like getting a vasectomy or getting birth control, which I thought was like really atrocious because it's the ways in which people of color are often like manipulated by the criminal justice system.
What is your favorite book, and what was the most influential book that you have read thus far?
So kind of embarrassingly, my favorite book is actually a fiction book. I know most people would think it would be nonfiction or realistic, but my favorite book is like by this Irish author actually, and it's this series. It's called like Skullduggery Pleasant, and it's basically about like this skeleton series. The reason as to why I like it is because when I was in like 4th or 5th grade, I actually got into it, and then he releases a new book each year, and I get more engaged into the book itself just because I like fiction and I like going into like imaginative worlds. So that's my favorite series. I think that my most influential book, or the one I thought was most influential to me, was probably like this article/book by Frank B. Wilderson. It was Red, White, and Black, and I thought that was a good like landscape book to teach me about different ways of viewing the world, especially from like a blackened lens or from a person's perspective who thinks like the world itself, or they have like a pessimistic outlook on the world and think that the world is just negative in regards to their body.
So because you are a senior, this is your last year of high school.
Yeah.
What are your plans for your future?
Yeah, so I just accepted to go into Wake Forest University, so I'm going to go to Wake and possibly get my master's and bachelor's in 5 years. Hopefully, if I can't, then it's whatever. But I'm going to Wake Forest, and I'm going to be debating in college. I'm also going to, so when I go to Wake Forest, I'm going to be majoring in sociology and also in psychology. I'm going to double major, and it's going to be a fun time, hopefully, and I might enjoy it.
Speaking of such contemporary issues, what polarizing topics are in the news today that you would like to see debates more often or out?
Yeah, so in debate, the people, when they're making topics, they typically don't try to do it around controversial issues. So you'll never see topics about things like abortion. You'll never see topics about things like religion. I would want to see debates about those just because I want to engage within those perspectives. So when it comes to things like Planned Parenthood, which is I know is a major issue right now, or things like sterilization, I want to have debates about those just so I can see people's differing perspectives. And I know it probably won't get picked, but I still want to talk about it at least.
So to end off this question, what's your favorite quote that you would like to give to the viewers?
So my favorite quote is probably one from it's like my senior quote, the one that I chose. I don't know who it's from, I just found it online, but I liked it. It's basically like, she was like magic, she came, she conquered, and she disappeared. And I thought that kind of represented my life, also like the whole black girl magic theme in my life, where I came to school, I did pretty decently, and then I just disappeared, because you have to disappear sometimes and leave.
And finally, Brianna, what was one of your biggest obstacles that you've had to overcome thus far?
So I think that in regards to debate, I think a lot of people say this themselves, that debate is psychological warfare. So you have to be willing to handle so much when it comes to being in a debate round and being outside of the debate round. I think that rather than like inside debate round obstacles. I've had like out of life obstacles. So you have to be able to handle friendships. You have to be able to handle arguments. You have to be able to handle doing research, balancing homework, trying to be a top student while at the same time consistently traveling so that your like grades are impeded upon. So I think that like balancing debate and like also just the real world and life itself is probably my biggest obstacle, just because like you lose a lot of friends, you gain a lot of friends through the debate process. You also let your grades drop sometimes, then bring your grades back up. So it's like you got to be able to handle the real world and also the debate world at the same time.
Sadly, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come chat with us.
Before we go, we would like to play a little game called Block Book. With all the recent privacy concerns surrounding our social media usage and comment violations, internet trolls, and lack of boundaries online, we are going to list a few names and we have to decide whether or not they should be allowed the right of a social media page and express themselves freely. Why and what might one of their posts look like? First up, Hannibal Lecter. Who is a cannibal?
I personally have not watched Silence of the Lambs, so I don't know him as a character that much and like who he is. But what I do know is that he's a cannibal and that he's deranged. So I don't feel like he should be limited or deprived of a social media account to express himself, because he's like any other person. He should express himself, even though what he says is clearly not the norm. He should be able to express himself in some way. I mean, should he be able to express himself as fully as, like, let's say some like uplifting posts? No, but he still should be able to express himself nonetheless.
I agree with him, but I just believe that like there's like certain limits of what he should say and what he shouldn't say. Like there's limits of like what he should be posting, especially since he is a cannibal. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Silence of the Lamb. I kind of disagree with them on that part, just because Hannibal Lecter was very coercive. So he was like an extremely like intelligent guy who was cunning, and he knew what to do on an underground level. So even if he does post something on the internet, it's a way in which he can manipulate girls or women into going into his household, going wherever he wants them to go. And I just think that for people who are like registered cannibals or people who are registered like sexual offenders, they probably should have themselves limited on the internet.
Oh, we have a response from an audience member.
Actually, I have a question for Aziz. I was wondering, like, what if Hannibal Lecter decides to like spread this idea of cannibalism through his social media?
I mean, if he were to spread that idea of cannibalism, well, like I said that his social media, it should be limited in some way, because what he says is clearly not the norm. Like cannibalism, that's like literally nobody agrees with that. So I feel like he should be limited in some way.
Nobody?
No, I mean mostly nobody. We have another response from an audience member.
So how do you gauge risks? I mean, like Hannibal seems like a pretty normal person, like outside of his craziness. Like how do you tell when he's about to start like killing and eating people?
Well, I think that like what they were saying, we can implement that too. Like if you're a registered offender in some way, like if you are a cannibal, then you probably should not have your social media, like you should probably not have a social media account in which you could spread that form of cannibalism at all, because then you just like facilitate like people following your activities, or you allow for yourself to be coercive and allow for people to get harmed in that process. So I think a risk engagement would be like if those people have like a historical background that allows for them to be a predator, then you should not allow that to continue. But also like if they show signs of being a predator, i.e. like if Hannibal was like, hey, if you would come to my place and we can do X, Y, and Z, like no, that's kind of bad and you probably shouldn't have that.
Second, Donald Trump.
He is the president of the United States, so to some extent he should be able to post because he still is the president regardless of what we may disagree with. But like a lot of the stuff that he says is either just baseless or propaganda. Like none of it is like most of it is like nothing worthwhile. So
I agree with him. Like, I feel like because he is our president, he should have his social media account or whatnot for us to see. But at the same time, like the stuff that he says is pretty ignorant, and I don't know like if the people out there would like really appreciate their president saying stuff that is like very ignorant towards them and other people. So it's like a yes and no for him.
Yeah, I agree with them. I think that Donald Trump should be able to post on like social media, like Twitter accounts or whatever, just because he is the president. I do also think that whatever he posts can be evidence against him. Like he's had his tweets pop up where he's contradicted himself with like the President Obama's presidency, like where he contradicted himself, like where he said that, oh, I don't support like the Syria crisis when Obama's doing it, but then he replicates the same incident. So I think it could be evidence against him.
We have a question from the audience.
Some people might say that because he's the president, his team should manage the social media page because he represents something bigger. So, you know, what he posts, it could have a lot of repercussions. It might start a war, for example. So for that, it should be treated more of a business. What would you guys say about that? Taking his personal right of being able to post what he wants and have his image be used instead.
I sort of agree with that claim. I think that there should be a constraint on what Donald Trump posts. Like if obviously he says like the N-word on his account, he's going to cause a lot of backlash from like black conservatives, from liberals. Everyone's going to go off on him. So it's a matter of like what exactly he says. So far, yeah, his media team should definitely control what exactly he says. Otherwise, he would just go unconstrained.
Yeah, I agree with her.
Members of hate groups.
Members of hate groups, I feel like they kinda shouldn't have a social media account, or if they do, it's very limited because what they're saying is very hurtful and very like, hateful. And I feel like what they're saying it's like its message is very corrupt and it's very like it shouldn't be out there and it shouldn't be like in the hands of like so many accessible people because it just creates this like eruption of like negative attention and behavior.
I agree with him just because like social media is used by a lot of younger people that with them seeing like them like hating on other people, it in a way it shows them that like as a young child or whatever that like being negative and being hateful to groups is okay when it's actually not. So I personally agree that they shouldn't have like a social media account for like people to see and stuff.
Yeah, I think that certain things that people say from hate groups should be limited. I don't think necessarily that they shouldn't be able to have a social media account just because it depends on like what you mean or what you define as a hate group. Because some groups might not be hate groups at all, but they can be defined as one. So I think it just all depends on perspective. I think that they should still be able to have the right to speak, and it just becomes a matter of who's listening.
Colts.
I don't know a lot about Colts, but Colts, I mean, their account should be very limited. It's very similar to hate groups. Like they have this message and they have like this corruptibility like that hate groups have, and they can reach out to so many young people because social media is filled with young people. So it's very similar and in the same boat as hate groups. It should be very limited, and also like we're not trying to like discredit or like disregard a person because a person is still a person regardless of like what they're affiliated with. So
I think that Colts, like with them on social media, I think it should be very limited just because they can post something or say something that will like want to draw in more like little kids, which will then like in a way make them believe that what they're doing is right. But I don't know. I think that they should just be very limited to what they say just because like they draw in like younger viewers, not viewers, little kids. So yeah.
Yeah, when you said cult, I thought of like the satanic cults. But yeah, I think that cults themselves should be limited in what they say. They should still have the right to social media, but it just depends on what they're posting.
Religious groups.
Religious groups out of all of these lists, they should have the most access to social media because I mean, even though like religious groups, there are different religions and people, we have to respect other people's religions. There's still religious groups and they want to get their message across. I mean, the whole point of religion, they want to get more people and they wanted to get more access across. It's not like where like there's a hate group or a cult where it's like propaganda where they have a single message and they're coercing you into like believing that message. So I feel like religious groups should have the most availability to social media out of this list, but maybe they can have some constraints in a way.
Yeah, I agree with him that religious groups do, like, out of all of them, should have the most social media restraints or whatever. Just because I think that with religious groups like posting on social media and saying stuff, like it helps them grow like their own community, and I feel like that's really important too. But at the same time, like some people don't believe in the same thing that they do, so they will also like have like some issues in that. But I feel like they should be able to like post or say whatever they want.
Yeah, I agree. Religious groups should be able to post. I'm just like, does ISIS count as a religious group? Are they like a religious terrorist group or no? They do count. I don't know. Because I know that they like are extreme. Okay, well, whatever. I think that they should still be able to post. I think that there should be constraints. Like if ISIS counts as like a religious group, but they're like a religious terroristic group, I think it depends on what you're saying and whether or not that should be posted.
We have a questions from the audience.
How do y'all draw the line between like a cult and like a religious group? Because some interpretations would like say one thing is a cult while another person might say that it's just a religion.
I guess that the difference is that with a cult, it's like propaganda. They have a single message, and they're only trying to coercing you into believing that message. Whereas religious groups, they create a community. They create people who all like they have different beliefs outside of religion, but they still fall under that one religion. So I feel like religious groups are more accepting, cults are more serious, and have a straight coercive message.
That's all the time that we have for today, and thank you for tuning in.
Remember, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email us at thenorkdebater@gmail.com.
Bye!